Okay, hey everyone. My name is Rich Elliott. I'm here from Marble Financial, and I'm happy here to be presenting the Thrive in Financial Fitness webinar for Gusto 54. So just to kick things off, I just want to get a quick intro from Tyler at Gusto 54. So over to you, Tyler.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Obviously, we are about to meet some really remarkable panelists and talk about some really amazing things that are not always common in the hospitality industry. And so I'm really excited to both learn and to continue to sort of absorb this new content. Anybody who is joining right now as a guest, thank you so much for being here and taking sort of your financial literacy and fitness into your hands. Obviously, this is very much just a step one of all the work that has to be done, most likely, regardless of your financial health status. There's always work to be done as I continue to learn on my side here as well. For anybody who is working with anybody in any of our locations that was unable to join today, this recording will be made available on Gusto 54 University, of course, in our mental health and well-being community up there. Before we sort of pass it along to Rich and the team of people he's sort of assembled, the financial Avengers, if you will, there is a couple of things I do want to quickly note. So because this webinar is being recorded, it is also being hosted from the traditional and unceded territory of the Talo Nation here in Toronto. Of course, all of our businesses here are on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And of course, now is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Today's programming and conversation is really stemming from our overarching programming of A Healthy Summer with Gusto. Coming out of the pandemic and back into operations, I think certainly in this industry, but not only this industry, is tough and difficult, both mental health and well-being, as well as finance, and the bridge that connects those two things. Of course, we know that there's some very strong data and stats that show the connection between financial health and literacy with overarching mental health and well-being. And so that's why Gusto right now is spending the time and energy and money on really trying to build this programming for the month of June to be that financial literacy and health awareness month. Check back at any point in Gusto 54 University for all the upcoming topics and webinars as well. I am going to throw it over to Rich and the Avengers in a moment, but first, just a very quick sort of introduction. Right now, we're working with a company with Rich called Marble Financial. Overarchingly, it's a virtual financial fitness training company that works with people to achieve their financial goals through a technology-based platform and the services that they provide. We've been fortunate that Rich and team has extended the My Marble Premium program to all of our team members at Gusto 54. So I signed up last week. So far, I'm terrified and very thankful to have the tool in my pocket. And so all of our email communications, you'll see if you use the code Gusto 60, you'll receive that 2-month free premium service with My Marble. Passing it over to Rich Elliott, who's the director of marketing and creative at Marble Financial. Rich, thank you so much for working with us on this, and the floor is yours.
Great, thanks so much, Tyler. That's a great intro and a great pitch for Marble there. So you're going to save me a bit of time when I have to explain what we do. So thank you so much. So yeah, just quickly going into the agenda today. So we're going to go over a couple of housekeeping items on the actual webinar software itself. Going to do a quick intro to all of our experts, but I really like the term Avengers, so I'm gonna use that for the next one. I'm going to quickly go into about Marble, and then we're going to go into some really interesting topics that are a very important aspect when it comes to working in the hospitality industry and how you can set yourself up for a prosperous financial future. So the subjects that we'll be going through today is the dreaded debt and how to become peace with it, becoming a budgeting boss, how to master financial literacy and goal setting, and then investing for your future. So just going into the housekeeping here. So we have a Q&A section on the webinar software here where throughout the webinar, you can ask any questions for any of our Avengers, and we'll be happy to answer them at the end. So if you have anything that comes up where you're like, you know what, I'd really like to ask one of our experts a question here, feel free to drop it in. And if we have a bit of time at the end, we'll be happy to answer them. Second part is we have a resource section on the webinar software here. It looks like a bit of a PDF type icon. We've uploaded a ton of awesome resources from us at Marble, and then also from our experts to go over a lot of the subject areas that we're covering today, but also some neat little tools for the future and very important items that you can use going forward, and also complement for when you use the free My Marble trial that we're getting from today's webinar. Then secondly, this webinar is being recorded. As Tyler mentioned, it's going to be accessible after we've chatted today. So you can take a look at it, share with your friends, and come back to it a later date if you wanted to brush up on any of the knowledge that you come up with today. And then contacting our experts if you'd like to reach out to any of our experts, feel free to either contact myself or Tyler, and we'll be happy to make an intro there. And then I already went into the Marble offer, so we'll go with that at the end there. So our experts today, we have many great experts, various different subject areas. So rather than me trying to explain all the awesome stuff they do, I'm just going to go one by one, and they can have a quick 20 to 30 seconds intro about them and what their sort of expert area. So Taz, take it away.
Thank you so much, Rich and Tyler. It's such an honor to be here. I love that term, Avengers. So I'm Taz Rajan. I'm the Community Engagement Partner at Bromwich+Smith. We are licensed insolvency trustees. That means that we help Canadians that are really feeling overwhelmed by that burden of debt, with the only two debt forgiveness programs that are federally legislated, which is consumer proposal and bankruptcy. And we're going to talk about that. My main passion is to normalize the conversation of debt and really help Canadians be equipped with the right knowledge so that they can make a really informed decision. So I'm excited to be here with this lovely panel of Avengers.
Awesome. Teresa, over to you. Oh, Teresa, you're on mute. You might have to unmute yourself, if possible.
The dreaded mute.
The dreaded mute. That's
this year and a half specifically. So we've all grown even further patience. I think we're all fine. But Teresa, I've discovered there's two ways to mute or unmute. One is hovering over your video and clicking that microphone, or on the top left dashboard, there's settings. When you open that, you can click microphone and start presenting as well. If that's helpful, I don't know.
I can't believe I haven't made a sign yet that says you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there we go.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm so sorry. I've had a challenge getting on this, and apparently I'm still having some challenges, but we meet them one by one because we are the Avengers.
There we go. Team effort.
So I'm Teresa Velarde. I'm a coach, an author, and a speaker, and I had the privilege of working with Rich in creating the Marble content for the program that you guys are working with. Patricia Giancas and I have been friends for a very long time, and I've learned a tremendous amount about finances in the financial world and have helped her in creating a couple of programs and books and whatnot. So I'm pretty well versed in finances, and I look forward to bringing what I know to the table today.
Awesome stuff. Patricia, tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, wow. So a little about me. I wear many hats. But I'm a bankruptcy insolvency counselor, which means that I work on behalf of clients before they approach the trustees. I'm also a mortgage broker for about 21 years, and I'm an author, and I'm a software developer. I don't even know what else I don't do. Oh, I know, I don't cook.
That's fantastic. Okay, Mario, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It's I second the notion that Taz brought out. I am also honored to be part of this wonderful panel. It's fantastic to make a contribution towards financial literacy. I think it's an important and also I would even call noble work, because we certainly have a massive gap. I would just say that around the world, let alone our own country, about financial literacy and what we can glean from some principles that we can each share and apply, and hopefully impart some wisdom and practical knowledge to everyone here. I've been in the financial industry for over 20 years now, mainly in financial planning. I am a financial planner with Royal Bank of Canada, and I love what I do. It makes me have motivation to contribute, make a meaningful contribution to my community, my organization, and of course the people I love to interact with. So thanks for having me.
Awesome stuff. And last but not least, Dong, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. Yeah, great subject, financial literacy. I work for a company called Dominion Lending Centers, a group of companies. We help, I think last year alone, 135,000 Canadians with their mortgage needs. So most of my conversation will probably be centered around mortgage financing, but as Mario and others said, financial literacy is so important for all Canadians, and wonderful that so many of you taking the time to sort of sit in and listen. Hopefully we can give you some insight. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. So there you go, everybody. There's the Avengers. And just a bit about myself. I'm the Director of Marketing and Creative here at Marble Financials. So I'm going to quickly give you a quick overview on who we are. Tyler did a great job at the start, but we're a company that really embodies and promotes financial empowerment for every Canadian. So we offer various different essential access to data, financial literacy that enables you to nourish the financial confidence to redefine yourself as a financially fit consumer. So we give you access to practical solutions to achieve financial goals, gain assurance in making smart financial decisions, and then thrive in financial wellness and confidence. So this is all done through AI technology and a predictive personalized recommendations that we offer through our software solution, which you have a free 60-day access to. And then through that, we enable you to improve your credit, crush your budget, fix your debt, and obviously build that essential financial literacy. So I don't want to go too much into detail. I just recommend you go check out the website and enroll in the free 60-day trial there. And then if you have any questions, you can obviously reach out to any of the Marble team. That's easily accessible through our site. Okay, so now let's jump into the good stuff. One big thing that we try to embody at Marble, and that we want to tell everybody, that no matter what situation you're currently in financially, it's okay. There's no need to panic. You have Avengers out there, not just people on this call, but throughout Canada, that are there ready to help you and put you in the right path towards financial fitness. So just to kick off the first aspect of today's conversation, we're going to talk about that dreaded debt. What is it? What it's about? How we can manage it? And the best way we can go forward into a positive area. So quick overview of debt in Canada here. You can see some real interesting stats around the Canadian financial space. 74% of Canadians are concerned about paying bills. That's pretty understandable. 53% are living paycheck to paycheck, which again, in the hospitality industry with the different types of income, that can be very sort of apparent there. And then lastly, 33% of Canadians have financially excluded credit scores. So this is something that, through something they may not have understood or may not even know, they don't have, essential access to mainstream banking in order to, reach their goals and prosper financially going forward. So there's some interesting stats there. So I'm going to start kicking off some questions now to our Avengers here. So first one is over to you, Teresa. Just check the mutes off there. What exactly is debt, and how can it be best defined in an easy and understandable way? This sort of question is more so related around, when I first came here, I was like, is mortgage debt? Is, credit cards obviously debt, but what actually counts as debt? And how do I understand which is which and how to tackle both things? So Teresa, what is your thought on that?
So there are two sides to the debt and credit conversation. Credit is something that's given from a bank, a lender of any kind, a credit card, and debt is something that you owe. The one who gives the credit, of course, is the creditor, and the one receiving it is called the debtor or the borrower. And there are certain different kinds of debt, as you just alluded to, Rich. There's home mortgages, which is secured debt. There's home equity loans, also secured debt. These are good kinds of debt, like car loans as well. Credit card debt can become bad debt if you don't know how to manage it, and student loans are also good debt. So there's a couple of other things like payday loans and cash advances that are considered to be debt. And the one thing to remember here is that as many of us have learned through our own experience, what we tend to do is say, when we come of a certain age, all of a sudden the credit card applications come flying into the mail, and we say, oh, I'll apply for this one, I'll apply for this one, I'll apply for this one, and the next thing you know, you are loaded down with having to make all of these payments, and then when it comes time for you to go into a situation where you need to acquire good debt, like a home mortgage or a car loan, maybe you might not qualify because you've mismanaged what has been placed before you. So my biggest takeaway from having run the gamut of having had good debt, bad debt, and everything in between, is that be mindful of what comes into your mailbox and what you can actually manage as far as debt is concerned, so that when the time comes for you to buy a home or to buy a car or to get a student loan, that you make sure that your ratio of good debt to bad debt is pretty equal and is manageable by your income.
Great. So that leads me on to our next question, which is quite an interesting one. Is debt management is a term that some people might find confusing. They don't know how to approach it. So Taz, one question that I wanted to ask you, because obviously it's very apparent to what you do at Bromwich+Smith there. What are the different types of debt management, and how can someone choose the right path? Say if they did go on what Teresa was mentioning there, and possibly have got too many credit cards, too many other areas of debt. What different options are there?
This is such a great question. I'm so glad that you brought it up, because this is something we don't normally talk about. So, there are lots of different options out there for your debt. I want to address the top 5, okay, which are do nothing, look at a debt management program, which can be for-profit or non-profit. There's debt consolidation, and there's consumer proposal and bankruptcy. Now, I want to say not all of these options are equal, and not all are going to give you the result or the relief that you need. It's a little bit like going shopping at a dealership where there is a brand new, top of the line Ferrari, and there's also, let's say, a Ford Focus. I have nothing against either vehicle. Let me say that as a disclosure first, okay? They're both vehicles, but they both perform differently, and they're going to give you a different result. So really, it's important to understand what these different options are. And the key is to take action. That is really the key. We're doing a little bit of knowledge today, but really knowledge can only take you so far. We've got to take action. So figure out what is the impact of each of these options. What is the outcome that each of these options is going to give you? And then take action by choosing the one that is best for you and completing it, taking that action, and then rebuilding your credit. So a great place to start would be with a free, totally confidential, personalized, no obligation consultation with any one of your Avengers here. Certainly, Bromwich+Smith, we're federally legislated, licensed insolvency trustees. We do the free, complimentary, confidential consultation, and we're going to refer you out to the right option for you. But it's a really great place to start and better understand what are your options, what is the outcome of each option, and then you can feel super empowered to take on the decision and take that action.
Yeah, that's great. Especially obviously over the last, 18 months with COVID and the potential of in the hospitality industry of, certain debt potentially racking up. Knowing that there's, all these different options is very, very interesting.
And knowing that you're not alone as well. I think that's a big one. I know when I went through my situation, I felt like I'm the only one. Everybody else has it together. That's not true, actually. So I think it's really important to know that you're not alone and you don't have to face this alone.
Definitely. And I think it goes to the whole, what we started is like, everything's going to be okay. Don't panic. there's a lot of people out there looking to help you, and you can see here that there's a ton of options available to everybody. So looking into this sort of area here, obviously bankruptcy and consumer proposals. Bankruptcy is something everybody knows. Like, I know it from Monopoly, and it's like, you don't want to do that. It's terrible. But from my experience at Marble, when looking at consumer proposals and bankruptcies, it's something that could potentially be a good option for somebody if they're up in the neck in debt. So moving on to that, Taz, what is the difference between a consumer proposal and bankruptcy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, how you just alluded to Monopoly, because really in Monopoly, when you go bankrupt, it's like game over. That's it, right? And that is what we normally equate bankruptcy with. So the good news is it's actually not game over with either bankruptcy or consumer proposal. It's not as bad as we think it is, or as bad as it is in Monopoly. So that is really great news. So a consumer proposal is a really great alternative to bankruptcy. Bankruptcy really should be the last resort. And a consumer proposal, it's a legally binding negotiated settlement where you're not paying back all of the money that you owe. So let's say in total you owe $10,000 to a couple credit cards, a line of credit, that sort of thing. We look at, what is your income? What are all your expenses? What are your assets and liabilities? And what is in your budget? And then the licensed insolvency trustee goes to your lenders or your creditors, as Teresa mentioned, and says, hey, listen, there is no way that Joe can pay all of this back, this $10,000. Here's what Joe can afford, and it's better than Joe going into a bankruptcy. So let's settle on this. So, and it is a legally binding settlement. It's not like a marriage proposal where you're like, please say yes, please say yes. It is here. This is what's going to happen in a bankruptcy. This is a better solution. And the nice thing about a consumer proposal, once you sign in, you're actually legally protected from those creditors. They cannot call you, send a demand letter, put a lien against your home, garnish your pay, take you to collections. All of that is protected. So you get that immediate peace of mind. I don't know, if any of you have struggled with debt. I know I have. And there's one part of it that's the debt and figuring out what to do and, getting over your paralyzed situation of dealing with the debt. And then there's the hounding and the pestering and the phone calls and the letters. And they just, as far as mental health goes, I know for me, that was extremely anxiety causing for me. So that's something, there is that legal protection with a consumer proposal. The other great thing with a consumer proposal, you get to keep all of your assets. They don't have to vest with the trustee. It doesn't impact your credit score as much as a bankruptcy does. I mean, all of these options will impact your credit score for some time. You can start to rebuild credit while you're in the consumer proposal, whereas with a bankruptcy, you've got to wait until after. So those are some of the pros and cons, or some of the differences between a consumer proposal and a bankruptcy. On the bankruptcy side of things, like I said, it is the last resort. We really want to avoid it at all costs. However, again, after bankruptcy, there is life, there is credit. You can build good credit after bankruptcy, which is a great thing. In a bankruptcy situation, it is a little bit different. And one misconception that's out there is that, you don't pay anything in a bankruptcy situation. I remember when I was in trouble, I was talking to, NMAX, which is my utility bill. And I was, crying on the phone. I don't know what to do. I can't afford this. I think I'm going to have to go bankrupt. And she says to me, if you can't pay this bill, you can't afford to go bankrupt. And I just about lost it. So, there is an administrative fee to put the bankruptcy together. And this is, it's by government tariff. Everything's out in the open. It's roughly $200 a month, depending on which trustee you go with. Ours is a little bit lower than that. And we work with our clients to help you figure that out, help you make that payment. A first-time bankruptcy is about 9 months. And then you can start to build credit after you've been discharged from that bankruptcy. It does have a bigger impact on your credit report. But again, both of these options are going to give you that relief. And there are ways to rebuild good credit after both of them. And I'm living proof of that.
Okay, great. And I think we just did get a couple of questions in there. I think it would be a good one to answer right now because it is completely aligned with that question. So we have one question here. So is a consumer proposal better or worse or the same for their credit score when versus bankruptcy or doing nothing but pay what you can?
Really great question, Tyler. Thank you for that. So a consumer proposal will show up on your credit report. And I think, but this is Patricia's area of expertise, but pipe in, Patricia, if you'd like. It'll show up as an R7, whereas a bankruptcy will show up as an R9. So the rating goes from 1 to 9, 1 being best, 9 being the worst. So R7 is a little bit better than an R9. Other things that will show up as an R7 actually are like a debt management program, credit counseling, all of those sorts of things will also show up as an R7. The do nothing, that's a really interesting one. I could almost do a whole session on the do nothing option. But keep in mind, doing nothing yourself will still have an impact on your credit report because the creditors are still reporting that you're late, that it's gone into collection, maybe it's gone into judgment, and all of those things are still going to lower your credit score and still show up as an R7. So before I answer the next question, Patricia, did you want to add anything to that?
Definitely. On a consumer proposal, it's actually really like an open loan without an interest payment. There's no interest. So the clients, if they have tax return coming back to them, they can pay lump sum payments, they can pay off the proposal at any given time. And while doing that, they can start rebuilding their credit. They can get credit cards. We teach the clients how to use their credit cards. They can get a GIC loan, and that start building your credit score as quickly as possible. A lot of people think being in a proposal means that for the next, if it's a 5-year term and it stays on your bill for 3 years, it's 8 years that they can borrow. That's not true. Your score starts to build from the date that you have been approved by the trustee and the courts. You could start building your score. Within 6 months, you're starting to see your score slowly increasing. But again, we have to look at the body of the report. There are things that you need to do. Make sure that they're reporting correctly on the credit bureau. If it's an R9 and you're in a proposal, you should change to R7. And a lot of different things that would help those clients increase their score. And it doesn't say that you can't go out and get a credit card. You can. Get a couple of credit cards and 2 credit cards at least, secured a GIC loan, and for a year increasing your score quickly.
Absolutely.
And Patricia, I think the key thing there is a lot of misinformation out there, and speak with somebody that understands what they're doing and get the right information so you can make the right decision, right? I think that's oftentimes where people get into trouble is they are afraid to ask the questions, and then they try to make up their own decisions, and sometimes they get themselves into further trouble.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, you got to be careful with your Google research too, right? Like you got to see what is the source of that Google article or that Google blog or whatnot. So I think that's a really great point, both Patricia and Dawn. See, such a good team.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it really comes down to having the conversations really about your options, feeling, not panicking, not rushing into something, and really sort of sitting back and understanding through financial literacy and other areas, what is the best route to sort of go. So last question on this debt side. So obviously in the hospitality industry, when your cash flow is somewhat unpredictable, how is the best way to manage the cost of debt? And I'll start off by giving that to you, Taz.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, and definitely, having been in the hospitality industry myself, I know that, your income can be very unpredictable. Of course, you've got a base, but I mean, some nights are great for tips. And then you go through something like this pandemic where, you don't even have the option to earn, your base wage, let alone any tips if things are shut down. So first of all, I want you to hear my heart and hear the empathy I feel for you, and know that the tips I'm going to share and that, the rest of the panel is going to share, it's not necessarily easy, but it definitely is doable. And it is, what we really need to do to preserve ourselves through those challenging times. So, the first tip I'm going to give for managing your debt when your cash flow is unpredictable, actually Mario talked about it earlier when we, had a pre-meeting. And it's kind of getting like a base budget. The Budgetnista, who's an author, she calls it like your ramen noodle budget, right? Like get an idea of, okay, either what does your average work out to over the month, or like, let's say you made no tips at all. What are you living on? Like figure out what that base budget is. You've got to have some sort of an idea of, here's kind of my base level of income, and kind of create okay, so if this is the income I'm going to have, let's say over a month generally, now I got to look at my expenses and figure out, you know, at the end of the month, is there money left or am I out of money, right? And then it might require some tweaking there. Maybe you've got to look at, you know, calling up maybe your phone company and saying, hey, I got to get a better deal than this, or, you know, renegotiating maybe something with a loan, or, you know, looking at, do I need to bring my expenses down? Do I need to increase my income with something else that I can be doing on top of this job? But really, you know, most Canadians don't have a budget or do a budget. About 60% of Canadians don't do that. So that would be a massive win if you just came up with like your base budget, if you were able to figure out, what does my income sort of average out to, or what is my base budget? That would be amazing. Another really important tip is to track, because I know when I was a waitress, and you know, your tips are in cash quite often, that cash was burning a hole in my pocket, I got to tell you, and it just kind of flew out, and I didn't really know where the money went. It kind of just disappeared. So, you know, whatever works for you, there are tons of tools out there. I'm not going to tell you go use Mint or go use this, but you know, figure out what works for you. It could be something simple as just like the notepad on your phone. You know, maybe it's just keeping receipts, whatever system works for you. But you want to track, again, as you're tracking, you can start to like look back over a month and go, oh, wow, okay, I'm spending a lot more on eating out than I had budgeted for. So I got to tweak this a little bit. And then the last tip I have before I let some of my colleagues jump in here is, in those times where there is more money, where you've done really well with your tips, or, you know, you've been able to work an event or whatever that may be, and you've got a considerably more amount of money than you would normally have, this is a time to save for leaner times. If you think about squirrels, that's what they do, right? They gather all their acorns, you know, when there's plenty, and rather than eating them, they save them for that time when they know it's coming, that winter is coming, and they're going to need those acorns. So again, human nature, I'm definitely guilty of it. When I've got that big stream of money coming in, all I want to do is spend it on all those things I've been putting off, but really looking at paying ourselves and putting it aside for those leaner times. And then I know there's a couple people on the panel that are dying to chime in on this one now.
Yeah, Taz, I think that's a great point. You can't make anything better that you don't measure, right? Like you got to measure what you're doing, and you know, you made a great point. Budgeting and tracking where you spend your money. Like, you'll be surprised if you just actually collect your receipts and realize, man, I spent a lot of money at coffee shops. And you know, if you just work that out over a week or over a month, you realize, geez, I spent a lot of money at these places. So, you know, tracking your spending, I think, becomes really, really important. And it's a small things, right? It's not big things. It's making the small tweaks and making it better. But you know, take small steps at a time, and everyone will be better off.
Exactly. And, you know, I'm not here to tell anyone, cut your coffee budget or cut your eating out budget. I think that's the empowering part. You look at your budget, you look at your tracking, and you tell your budget what needs to happen. You tweak it for you. And that's, you know, for me, when I was struggling, I used to say, oh, I can't because I'm broke. I can't because I'm broke. And then I changed it to, you know what, that's just not in my budget. And it made me feel like the CEO of a corporation that's like, that's not in our company's budget. You know, but it was just this tweak, and it gave me that, it helped me go from victim to victor. It helped me go from, you know, this place of coming from strength and feeling good about the financial decisions. So I think that's key as well. I know we tend to pick on the coffee budget. It's not necessarily that you have to cut out your coffee budget. It's just take a look at, where is the money going and what needs to change for you? What are your goals, and what do you want to tweak so that you can achieve those goals?
Yeah, that's yeah, go for it, Mario.
Those are great points. I had some material prepared on some of the budgeting as well, which may or may not come up again later on. But further to Dong and Taz, you make some great insights there. Just remember to tip yourself too, right? The golden rule is to pay yourself. In this case, we can reframe it, tip yourself, set a baseline, as Taz said, or an average, and stick to the average. And that helps to remove some of the randomness or unpredictability with unpredictable income or irregularities of income. It also, in a way, protects your assets too, right? Like if you're watching out for the windfalls, like Taz said, it's great to have a windfall like a tax refund or a bonus or an unexpected welcomed surge in income or cash flow. But then think about yourself and resist the urge to splurge. And it's all about a mindset. So if it's money you haven't planned on getting, then think about your future as well along that, and think long term, even if it's hard to do. Sometimes we think of our cash savings or our emergency slush fund as something short term. Try thinking of it as long term and resist the urge to dip into it because you think it's got to be there for something that's going to happen next week.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and it leads me on to kind of the budgeting section. We already answered a ton of questions on budgeting, which is fantastic. So we did a survey at Marble where, as Taz mentioned, that 52% of Canadians don't actually have a budget, 68% weren't financially prepared for COVID-19, and then 77% feel unprepared in case of emergency. So I just want to put this question over to Teresa on a similar nature. Why is budgeting as a whole so important when you work in hospitality?
Well, whether you work in hospitality or not, if you have an uneven income, this is going to really support you. But going to the hospitality now, let me put it in disclosure here. My son owns a restaurant, so I know, especially now with COVID, how stressful managing money can be for those in the hospitality industry. And as we're coming out of that time of our lives, and we'll never have to face another pandemic again, many of the restaurants were shut down, tight, didn't have any work for anybody, and now getting people back to work is creating an issue in itself. But one of the biggest things that I tell some of the girls that ask me who are working for my son's restaurant, how can I manage my money? And I'm like, you have to learn how to manage your money before your money manages you. If you don't have a plan in place, it will run amok and you spend everywhere and anywhere that they take cash. Or credit card for that matter. But so let me just, since I'm such a word nerd, let me give you a definition of a budget. According to Webster's, it is a plan for the coordination of resources and expenditures, and it is also the amount of money that is available for, required for, or assigned to a particular purpose. So what that portion of it means that how much is your gas bill, your electric bill, how much do you have in credit cards, do you have a student loan you need to pay, what's on your list of obligations, financial obligations every month. And going back to what Taz said earlier, and that has been repeated, if you go ahead and start to calculate how much money you're actually bringing in with your base salary and your tip money, using your notepad, using a calendar, whatever works for you. Find something that works for you. I love a journal. A journal, you can always put in what's going on financially. You can always one thing that helps is to get the feelings out about what's happening with your money. Writing them down is a really helpful thing. But the biggest thing is keeping track of gives you control of your money. And it keeps you focused on what you might consider to be short-term and or long-term goals. If you don't plan for something, then it's the reaching that goal will be inadvertently be put off. So again, I'm going to go back to my statement: take control of your money before your money takes control of you. It brings awareness to what's happening with your money, and a budget helps you to organize your spending and your saving. And I heard Mario say this, and I heard Taz say it, but everybody's going to say it. Pay yourself first, or tip yourself first. I was always taught to save 10% of my money, put it in the bank before I did anything else. And then Daddy took some when I was living at home, and then the credit cards and whoever else. And God took a few bucks here and there, into the basket at church. You need to put what your priorities are. But the first thing that I would suggest, and all of these financial experts will suggest, is pay yourself first. Even if it's only a few dollars, pay yourself first. So when at the end of the day, when you count your checks, even if you put it in an envelope, there are some people who really tout the envelope process. Even if you separate that money, that is money that you do not touch, and that money that will eventually go into the bank or whatever you want to invest it in, that will help you to build for your future. And it really helps you to decide what debt to take on down the line as well. So the biggest thing that I would ask you to take away for this is budgeting allows you for your present, your short-term future, and your long-term future. So manage your money before your money takes control of you.
Awesome, and that's a perfect segue because my next question is for Mario. So when it comes to what you were saying, when it comes to kind of tipping yourself and your income and managing your things, what is the best way that someone in the hospitality industry can better understand their income and how it works?
So it sounds like that's more like has a tax overtone to it, Rich, and we can direct it however which way. But generally, reporting tips and gratuities in Canada follows or should follow a certain routine or protocol to simplify the whole thing. And the first thing you want to do is track all your tips and gratuities received throughout the year. We heard a lot about journaling and doing an audit trail for yourself just to help keep a budget, but this is also good for your tax planning as well. You can calculate the total earned from the beginning to the start, or beginning of the year to the end of the year, which is January 1st to December 31st. And then you report whatever you have on line 104. Now, there is in some cases where you get your tips and gratuity from your customers in the form of cash, in which it's a voluntary disclosure methodology, or it's controlled by your employer, in which case you get a T4. There are benefits, by the way, to report tips and gratuities. We had a conversation around credit and mortgages. Well, if you report more income, you may be able to qualify for a larger loan or mortgage. You may also be able to save more vis-a-vis towards your retirement, like an RSP, which could also be used, your RSP that is, for a down payment if it's your first time buying a home, or even going back to school down the road. So there are benefits to reporting taxes. Of course, you'd have to pay some back to the government in this case, and so there is some varying opinions as to whether people choose to or not. However, those are some strict benefits as far as and how to best understand your income. Once you understand your income, as has already been said, it's best to take a percentage of the gross amount of your income. So when you establish your average baseline, use the gross amount as my recommendation, or as our recommendation, to save or pay yourself first, rather than your net amount, meaning after your deductions are made, because you could be in a varying tax bracket. So it's helpful to use your gross amount there.
Awesome. And kind of leading into that, on the resource section of this webinar too, there's some great tools provided by us at Marble and also Mario that really helps with that areas of budgeting. There's a couple of worksheets in there. And also on the Marble side, you can track your budget online using technology, and it takes all your data and will help you sort of manage that income a lot better. But obviously with tips and income that isn't directly put into your bag, writing it down is definitely a great way to go. And we've already obviously put the tools in there. So moving on to a next question for you, Mario. So how do you protect certain assets during volatile times? So there's obviously you have certain obligations, you have certain areas. When stuff isn't as predictable, how can you best manage those particular areas?
So I think a lot was said as far as the cash flow part of it. If you're looking to grow through investing, that's a great way. If you have any longer term financial goals, and we'll get into some financial goals in a little bit as well, but thinking longer term for financial goals and investing wisely, there are principles surrounding investing that one could apply. That's part of the resources section as well. But nevertheless, that's a great way to protect some of your assets down the road, especially against inflation, which is a hot topic these days, and also having something for yourself and your future.
Okay, that's some great advice there. And one thing as well that Tyler just mentioned, that Gusto pays gratuity in the form of a debit card, which can be used to make purchases or direct transfer directly into the main bank account. So that's going to be a lot easier for everybody at Gusto to be able to take the advice that the Avengers gave you there and really be able to track your budget and spending a lot easier. So that's actually a great initiative from Gusto that helps everybody out there. So moving on to that, now budget is somewhat covered, and obviously debt are very important aspects of your finances. Financial literacy and goal setting is a very important aspect for not just right now in the time, but also in the future. I know Mario has some great analogies around sort of planning for the future, and financial literacy in Canada is something that people don't necessarily understand too much. So it does cover a lot of different areas, like we just went on debt and budget, but being able to plan for the future and understanding what are your right options when it comes to investing, RSPs, getting a mortgage, buying a home. There's so many different subject areas that a lot of people might not necessarily understand in the full. And you can see here that 60% of Canadians feel their financial literacy is poor. 80% of young Canadians aren't confident in their financial knowledge, and 43% feel they aren't prepared for the future. So first question going over to you, Mario, again. How would you define what a financial goal is? Because it's such a broad term. And for me, it's like, is it a mortgage? Is it paying down my debt? Is it budgeting? Is it investing for the future? How would you define a financial goal?
I love the question, because we usually start with numbers when we think about goals. But if you think about goals in everyday life, there's less to do about numbers. There's more to do about you. So goals really begin not with the numbers, but with you as a person, your values, which our values don't really change as much or often throughout our life course, right? We start through our upbringing, determining our values. Maybe it's through our parents or parental upbringing or the environment we're immersed in at school or whatever. And then we establish priorities as we mature and grow and maybe take on a career path and whatnot. And those priorities can shift depending on what stage in life we find ourselves in. But ultimately, personal finances begin with you as the person, and then the numbers, and then the finances. So when you establish your goals and they become crystallized by virtue of you understanding yourself better and your values and what you want out of life, then you make decisions not so much on spreadsheets, but on your priorities, which then determine whether or not to save for anything short-term, which could be anything like buying a car, a vacation, or a property, to medium term, which could also include a property, or long-term, which tends to be more retirement generated oriented. There's a fabulous quote by one of my favorite authors, Morgan Housel, who says, "Doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave." And so how we behave influences how we behave with money. And establishing and maintaining financial goals goes hand in hand with introspectively getting into our mindset of what we want out of life, or what we want out of what we want to achieve for ourselves or for our family, and then establishing a path to get there.
Great, and that sort of answered the next question that I had here, which was, why was it so important? So I'll go on to the next one here. What are some different ways to set financial goals? Do you have any tips or tricks for someone, especially in the hospitality industry, as we mentioned with COVID-19 and so forth? What are some ways that someone could approach setting these financial goals?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, when we articulate what our goals are and maybe have a tracking mechanism, there is a lot of software out there. I know our RBC has a very powerful tool with a high level of engagement. You as the person, as the user, not necessarily reliant on an advisor to help you along the way, but it's called My Advisor. It's an offshoot of your online banking, should you want to use it. And it helps you create and maintain and track whether or not you're on track to any and all goals that you have, whether it be, as I say, short-term, medium-term, or long-term. So, if you're creating a budget using technology, like there's a lot of tools out there, and I heard some already being mentioned, where it uses AI to track your spending. And having a budget, your cash flow, is one key thing to have in check. The other one is your net worth. Imagine your net worth if you're walking into a shopping mall and you see the billboard where it has a sticky or your indicator that you are here. It helps you understand where you are today so that you know where you want to be in the future. There are other goals that you can establish, such as extensive traveling if you wanted to take up some more traveling than usual later on. And of course, retirement is the big one. Rich, would you like me to expand on any one in particular? Because I do have some examples that I can use anecdotally, or maybe some others want to chime in as well.
I think typically when someone, especially when you're goal setting, what would you recommend doing first? Because obviously there's investing, there's buying a house. I know personally for myself, I was always like, oh, I need to start putting RSPs, but then, I want to start saving for a mortgage. I want to do this. And it was kind of flustered. So which one would you recommend going with first when it comes to their financial journey?
Okay, that's a great question. There's always a place to start early, which is one of the principles of investing for any long-term goals. The earlier you start, the more momentum you build. Think of a snowball that just keeps getting bigger as it rolls down the hill. That's descriptive of what we can call compounding interest. And so the earlier you start, the more you will have and the less you have to save along the way. So that's for your long-term planning. So you mentioned an RSP. An RSP doesn't necessarily only have to be used for retirement. It is a tax-deferred investment vehicle, which means you're not getting taxed on your contributions. You are getting taxed upon redemption. However, there are programs like the Home Buyers Plan where you can almost create a shorter-term goal by using your RSP effectively to put as your first down payment up to $35,000 to your first down payment for your first home, or you can also use it for education purposes, I alluded to earlier. So one of the principles and one of your goals could be start early, take advantage of an RSP, take advantage of a tax-free savings account, which is somewhat complementary to an RSP. You could use it for shorter-term goals. You're not taxed on the growth of your money. You are taxed on your contribution, though. And then anything that you would have as say an immediate need, say you need money in 3 to 6 months, you wouldn't want to take on too much risk, if at all, by virtue of your balance maintaining safety of principal and not fluctuating if you're investing in the markets.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So go ahead, Patricia.
So Mario, for someone like me, I love spending. Then you would recommend me putting my money in a vehicle that I can't touch, maybe an RSP or a TFSA, because if I put in my savings account, it's not going to be there for too much longer. Any other suggestions?
Yeah.
You.
So the best advice I can share with that is to automate everything that you can. Oftentimes what I see is people either procrastinate to get started. So inertia is kicking in before doing anything. I would say do something and then let inertia kick in. And there's strong statistics to show that staying the course outdoes by at least 4 to 5% of those that try and change lanes and do something when really doing nothing is the best thing to do, or not do rather. I tell the story of some investors that, they experience the worst, quote unquote luck when they get into the markets at the worst time possible. And let's say they only did get into the markets 10 times over the last 30 years, all of which were the very worst that you could possibly enter. And just before a downturn or a major correction in the economy and spilling into the markets, even that person not doing any investing at all, just staying in where they're at, are still doing better off than somebody not doing anything at all, or spending, of course. So getting in as early as you can, automating as much or all of your contributions, and investing that you can will almost assuredly lead yourself to have a greater success in building your financial net worth.
Okay, that's great, and that leads me on to this question. So if someone was to work in hospitality, given we're talking about budget, debt, getting those sort of areas aligned, and now talking about the future, what would be the first step that you would recommend for somebody who works in the hospitality industry for investing and creating that automated path that you just mentioned there?
So as alluded to earlier, when thinking in terms of your income, think in terms of percentage rather than a fixed number. And so whether it be a 5% or 10%, whatever you can feel you can allocate safely based on your baseline or average, put it to a contribution plan of whether it be an RSP, a tax-free savings account, or non-registered. Non-registered being that it's not registered for tax purposes with the government or CRA. And TFSAs, RSPs, those are considered registered plans, as are RESPs, or registered education savings plans. So, and then think about year over year. You get a raise, you hope to get a raise, or your income appreciates every year. Remember to increase or give yourself a raise when making your contributions to any savings plans as well, whether it be 1%, 2%, at least it'll help you keep up with inflation. And again, over time, statistically, it can result in between tens of thousands to even hundreds of thousands of dollars in your favor.
Yeah, that's some great advice, and that's one cool thing that we have at Marble when it comes to spending and available income. We'll recommend through the automation that the software provides that you have this amount of income, maybe consider doing something like mentioned there, Mario. But it really comes down to sort of the conversations and understanding what is the best option. And I think Mario, you mentioned so many like amazing different things, and I think it comes down to the personal situation that you're in as a consumer. Because I know for me, I first started off with RSPs, and I didn't even know about the sort of the home buyers plan. And my ultimate sort of financial goal was to eventually, buy a house. So moving on to, so this is for Dong, like how would someone basically, that maybe they're started investing, they're in a pretty good with their debt, their budget. How do you know when you're ready to buy a house? And why are house prices rising? And should people be worried? Should they be rushing into it? Should they wait? Because there's obviously a massive part of your finances, and understanding when to pull the trigger and not is something that I personally have gone through, where these house prices are going up and I'm like, I need to buy, but I probably could have just sat for a bit and waited. So starting off with those questions, how would you go about it?
Yeah, great question. I think like everything we've talked about up to this point, it's planning and being prepared and asking the right questions and talking to people that are experts in that field. So when it comes to buying a house, and obviously without question, it's saving for a down payment and sort of getting prepared. The bigger question is that I think we say Canadians have two passions. One is hockey, and the other one is housing. And for whatever reason, house prices and home buying appear to be as popular as the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens. So listen, the reason why house prices are increasing, lots of debate, but I think ultimately comes down to a lack of supply. There just isn't enough housing out there to meet the demand of Canadians. They predicted this year that we're going to bring in 400,000 new immigrants to this country. That will be record-breaking pace. We haven't had 400,000 Canadians come to this country since 1913. So that's just put into perspective how many new Canadians we're bringing to the country. The other thing to keep in mind is we have a ton of millennials, and maybe a lot of you on this call are on that spectrum of that category. There is a new lobby group called Generation Squeeze that talks about sort of the millennials being squeezed out of the housing market. So it's hard, I get it, but like I think with anything, it's about having a plan, being prepared, and preparing for it. So starting early and talking to people about how to get into the housing market is really important, and just not panicking, because there's a lot of people out there now that make a lot of panic decisions, and we call it making emotional decisions that you may over the years come back to regret, but just be patient and realize that your time will come.
Cool. And then so if I've gone and I've spoken to Mario and I feel like I'm in a good place to my investment portfolio is looking good and I'm ready to start looking at a mortgage, how would someone go about getting sort of the best value mortgage? Because there's tons of options. You obviously have banks, alternative lenders, loads of different opportunities and options. So what is the best way to go about that?
Yeah, there's I'd say the first thing to do obviously is get pre-approved, so know how much you qualify for, so you know the amount of house that you can buy. Mortgages have become very complicated. I think there's been 80 rule changes to mortgages in the last 10 years. So the landscape around mortgages have changed dramatically. So the other thing I think is important to realize is that not every mortgage is the same. So, much as you may have a financial goal, you may have a borrowing strategy around your mortgage. You may say that, that in the next 3 to 5 years that you're going to start a family. You may have a short-term plan that something may change. You might get married. So oftentimes what people do is they get caught up in the lowest interest rate mortgage, but what they don't realize is that there are a lot of restrictions that come with it. So understanding the mortgage you're getting into and some of the policies and the conditions that come with it are really, really important. 95% of all Canadians take a 5-year fixed rate mortgage. But what's interesting is that most mortgages don't last more than 3 years. So you're breaking that mortgage, and there are some hefty penalties that come with breaking a mortgage early. So understanding those kind of things and talking to a professional and getting that right advice is so important. So best value of a mortgage is a mortgage that fits your borrowing strategy, and it would be my best suggestion on that one.
Okay, great. I know we're at the hour mark, but I have one sort of other question before we jump into a couple of Q&As. Is credit scores. There's just this 3-digit number that people, don't properly understand it. What's going on with it? How does it actually impact me? Because obviously, you could have a great investment portfolio. You could have a large down payment, but you could potentially have, a low credit score. How much does that actually impact your approval, interest rate, and so forth on something like a mortgage? Even, when it comes to credit cards and all that different area, how important is your credit score? That's for you, Dom. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, it's critically important. We won't have time to go into this, but they call it the 5 C's of credit. So there's 5 words that start with the letter C that go towards deciding whether or not somebody grants you credit or allows you to borrow. And one of those things is the likelihood of you repaying that debt. So the credit score, more so now than ever, with artificial intelligence and predicting the likelihood of someone repaying their debt becomes really, really important. So making sure that you protect your credit score, making sure that you do all the right things, as others have taught you on this call, as the vendors have, is really important. So if you do have a poor credit score, it likely will affect your interest rate that you're borrowing against. And like anything, there are people that are willing to lend to you based on the amount of risks they're willing to take on. So you've got everybody from A lenders like the RBCs of the world, all the way down to what we call subprime or alt-A borrowers or lenders like Home Trust and Equitable, right down to your private lenders that will charge you 8 to 12% depending on your risk. So please make sure you take care of your credit scores.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we've come to realize is that monitoring your credit score and checking on it regularly is a very important aspect, and something that not a lot of people understand is it's free, doesn't impact your score heavily, and it's something at Marble that we provide and you can get access to in the offer that we give there. But not only monitoring it is good, but understanding different things that impact your credit score. So we're able to sort of educate ourselves on how it works, but also have that sort of expert advice in order to get the right interest rates, the right mortgage, and increase your chances of approval. Because once you get various different aspects right, it's very important to use those and use it as like a ammunition when it comes to goal setting and having that going forward. So I'm just going to jump in. I know we're over an hour now, but we had a pretty good question that came in on a budget standpoint. So I'm going to open the floor to anybody on this. So how do you balance creating a budget that allows your happy place purchases for your mental well-being and your financial health? Is there a target percentage or fixed, non-fixed, and other expenses that you need to take into account when creating a budget? So the floor is open to anybody there who wants to take that one.
I'll take it. So I said earlier, 10% is a good way to start. And for me, that actually helped me to get into the habit of setting money aside so that I could still have money for my, I love this expression, happy place purchases. I love that. But I could still also make some decisions on what I wanted to do with the money that I saved, the 10% that I saved. So I could either, and as you know, if you're someone in the hospitality industry and you go through a period of time, like summer is here, and there are a lot of people being out more than they were earlier in the year, and restaurants are open, hotels are fully open, and people are feeling good. So your tips may rise during this time. So if you want to bump up your savings to 12 or 15%, make all of your necessities are paid for, then that's a good way to start saving for your future. In an industry, and this is being self-employed myself with what I do, the amount of money that I put away each month is different based on how much money actually comes in. So I know exactly where the hospitality industry is, although I'm not actually in that industry. I do work on, I do not have a fixed income that comes in every month. So it fluctuates, and you have to do what's comfortable for you to still allow yourself to make those mental well-being and happy place purchases. Just ask Patricia, she'll tell you.
I could say something as well on this topic, Rich, if there's a bit of time here.
Yep.
So it's also important to be specific about what that happy place is and how much you want to spend or allocate, whether it's weekly or monthly, however it is that you're budgeting for. Think of a diet. If you're following a certain nutrition plan, there are some that suggest you can cheat, have one cheat meal per week. And visualizing what that is in advance can also be motivational. And so you think of yourself now on your budget standpoint. There's been studies that showed nicknaming accounts as far as a goal is concerned. Let's say it's let's say you want to buy a new MacBook or an iPad or something. If you're an Apple aficionado like I am, and you want to buy the latest and greatest, and you label nickname one of your bank accounts to be that funding or that goal funding for your quote unquote happy place, then that's fantastic. It's also motivational. I'll just quote you another fairly recent study that was done on education planning. So during the global financial crisis about 10 years ago or more, actually more now, everybody was selling all their investments, whether it be stocks, bonds. They were just getting out of the markets entirely. Except what they found was education savings were going up. They weren't even being sold. And the reason for that is because parents were shown a picture of their child and their savings went up by 2.5%. Because there was a goal attached, there was a purpose attached to the goal. So when you have a purpose and you have visualization behind that quote unquote happy place, it does a lot of good for your mental well-being. And you don't have to worry about going out of your disciplinary path to set a right course and not overdo it for yourself. And then that will be detrimental, I would argue, for your mental health down the road.
That's super interesting because another tip that I had from a goal setting standpoint is it's very basic, and is that something as simple as just like setting the password on your computer as one of your goals. So you're consistently sort of reminding yourself of that particular goal is something that I've used myself and is a very valuable aspect to it. So, recommend doing that as well. So one other question that did come in, this would be probably for Taz and also potentially Patricia. What can't you do when you're in a consumer proposal? Because obviously it sounds like, it could be a good way for debt management, but what are you restricted to when once you actually get into one?
I'm going to give Patricia a little airtime here. I can definitely answer it. Maybe I can fill in some gaps.
Oh, no, go ahead, Tori. Go ahead, Taz.
Okay. So yeah, that's a really interesting question. What can't you do when you're in a consumer proposal? And, there's very little you can't do. So as Patricia had mentioned, you can pay off your proposal sooner. You can start applying for credit while you are in the consumer proposal. Now, it is going to look a little bit different, okay? You're going to need special financing if you're looking at a vehicle. you know, you want to be working with reputable vehicle financing companies that work with insolvent clients that aren't used to working with consumer proposal and bankruptcy and aren't going to take advantage of the situation. You won't qualify for like a mainstream credit card right at that point, but you can be applying and setting up a secured credit card, keeping in mind prepaid credit cards are doing nothing for your credit report, but a secured credit card is a great way to get started. Patricia mentioned a really great one, like setting up, you know, some sort of an investment and taking out an investment loan for that will help you as well. So there's a lot of things that you can do during a consumer proposal. I guess the only things that you cannot do during a consumer proposal. You can also, your income can go up during a consumer proposal. There's no issue with that either. You can keep your assets as well, as we had talked about. So really the only things you cannot do is, you know, it will be challenging, you know, to qualify for a mortgage at the best rates of best terms. I'm not saying you won't qualify for a mortgage because of course a mortgage broker has access to alternative lenders, but the biggest thing you cannot do in that moment, in that time period, is qualify for the best rates and terms for some credit that you are looking for out there. But it will not restrict you from, you know, being able to, you know, rent a home or still being able to use your debit card or your debit Visa, or, you know, still building credit and keeping your assets and growing your assets actually.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I can add to that.
Patricia.
I can add to that, Taz. One of the most important things people need to do when they're in a proposal is start budgeting, start planning for the future, putting aside money. They need to learn how to budget. I mean, I look at the good old days back. I'm from the dinosaur age, and we budget without even knowing that we were budgeting. I bought my first home back in the 70s, and going to the bank, there were no such thing as a credit score, credit report. All we know is that we want to make sure that our manager was in a good mood that day, and we can get our mortgage approved. But you know, so times have changed over the years, and having a good credit score and understanding credit and credit report is so important in today's life. Whether you're going to go bankrupt or you're going to do a proposal or investment, I think that, you know, understanding the credit report, because it tells a story about you. It tells the story whether you're a sloppy payer or you're what type of a job you have, or if, you know, I look at my kids and the way they each treat credit differently. Although I'm their mom and I know a lot about credit, no one pays attention, but I send them all to the internet. There's a lot of good tools on the internet to help people to understand credit. And once you understand credit, life is good. You can achieve so many more things. I know we're out of time.
Yeah, we have a couple of good questions from Tyler here, so hopefully everybody still has a couple minutes. So one question is, if they do set up, you know, 10% of their income and move it into some sort of savings account, and I think this would be a Mario type question, should they focus on a TFSA, RSP, mutual fund? What is the best way to understand that? Would it be just simply going in and speaking to someone like yourself, or doing research online?
Having a financial coach or advisor, there's a whole bunch of stats to show that there's a huge difference when you have somebody to help you remove the emotional aspect, especially toward investing. And that's what we're talking about here is if you're allocating a portion of your income or cash flow towards an investment plan, it would make it easier to talk to somebody. Also because we're bombarded with information daily. How do we know which one is suitable for us? The first thing to do is to establish a plan. In a plan, there are two main components in addition to your goals, or helping you to establish your goals, are your cash flow, as we talked about extensively today, and your net worth, as we also alluded to. Once you have a baseline figured out and you know what your cash flow, give or take, is month over month, you can then determine how much you could pay yourself, again, tip yourself first towards an investment plan. Whether you start with a tax-free savings account, RSP, or non-registered, or all of the above, can really depend on your goals and, again, how much is available. But starting somewhere is the best first step. and then you can gain traction and momentum, and then having a steady hand or a coach to help you along the way is always advisable. I'll just mention something around that too. There was a very important survey that was done last week by FP, Financial Planning of Canada, where they conducted a financial stress index. And for the latest one in 2021, they showed that many Canadians, in fact, over half of us Canadians, stay up awake at night worrying about money, even more than COVID. And then that resulted in a third of us facing health issues, which was up significantly by 18% since last year. But what they also found is that that was dramatically reduced when they had a financial planner or advisor with them. And so you compare that to a doctor. He could be the best surgeon on the planet, but he's not going to operate on himself. He will still have to trust somebody else to do certain things that he himself cannot do on his own. And sometimes it's just removing the emotional aspect. As I said, get yourself out of your own way, have a conversation about your goals. Typically, you'll also be called upon to answer a few questions to make up your what we call an investor profile. So getting into your risk tolerance, your investment objective, and of course your time frame. Usually, if it's anything under 5 years, as far as your time frame is concerned, that will take on some questioning around what is your true goal in terms of longevity towards investing, because it may not be appropriate to take on any risk with your capital or your balance, in which case there may be some other solutions that they can offer you.
Great. And then the last question here, and then we'll wrap it up, is when it comes to financial planning, and if one of the goals is qualifying for a mortgage, there's lots of rumors going, not rumors, but there's, some people say you need 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%. What is accepted? What is acceptable from lenders? Has this changed or decreased? And what should people generally target when it comes to saving for that down deposit and what to aim for? So opening the floor to anyone on that one.
We've lost Dawn, but I know Patricia is also a mortgage broker. She can probably answer that one. Hey, Patricia?
Sorry, I have a hard time hearing. It's zooming in and out.
Oh,
can you hear me?
So Patricia, yeah, can you hear us?
A little bit.
So what percentage or money down should someone aim for when applying for a mortgage? There's obviously lots of different advice out there, 5, 10, 20%. What should someone set for when they're looking to save up for that?
Sure. If you're buying a home for $500,000 and less, which there aren't any homes for $500,000 or less, then you need to save 5%. But up to $1 million, you need to save 10%. So try saving 10% for $1 million home.
And is there any impacts from putting 10% down compared to, say, 30%? Because I know there is, you have to pay some sort of insurance or something on top of mortgages. Is that right?
There is a CMHC in mortgage insurance, but that's added on to the mortgage itself. So the more money that the more money that you put down, the better it is, because no one wants to pay that high mortgage insurance premium.
Okay, great to know. So
you can still buy with 10%. You can still, but for most of our clients, we try to encourage them to put more down, and then you have to have the income to support the mortgage.
Okay, fantastic. So, yeah, we're already at 1 hour and 18 minutes, so I'm gonna wrap everything up there. I know, the Avengers here, we can talk about this stuff for days and days and hours. But I hope everybody got a good understanding on the different areas of financial fitness when it comes to debt, budget, savings, and goals. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to everybody that took part today. Some great information. Loved everything that you had to say, and even myself, who works in the industry, actually learned some new things today. So I really, really appreciate that from everybody here. And then lastly, just wanted to remind everybody, as part of this webinar, you obviously get your free 60 days of My Marble. So that's going to really help you track your spending, understand your credit, build that financial literacy in order to get your finances in a state to become financially fit and start reaching those goals that we all talked about today when it comes to investing, home ownership and so forth. So I really hope that you can take advantage of that offer there. Again, reminder, there's lots of documentation in this webinar, so highly recommend downloading it, digesting it, using the resources that we've provided today. And then if you have any questions for any of the speakers today, you can contact us at My Marble, and we'd be happy to introduce you and keep that conversation going because, as you saw today, we love to chat. So feel free to reach out to Tyler or myself. There'll be contact information provided, and we'd be more than happy to help. So again, I know we went over a little bit there, but thank you so much for everyone for joining today. And hopefully we'll speak to you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.